Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and we are happy to be back for another hour of good gardening. As you can tell, we have finally moved into our new studio, and we are very thrilled with our new surroundings. We do hope you like it as well, because it's really fun and we look good. And you might look at all new and shiny here, but you can still count on us to answer your questions. Those volunteers are standing by to take your calls. That number is 1-800-676-5446. As always, pictures and emails for future shows can be sent to byf@unl.edu. We do need to know where you live. Please give us as much information about your situation as you can so we can give you a good answer. You can also find Backyard Farmer on our YouTube channel with video features and past programs. And while you're at it, make sure you stop by our Facebook fan page to say hello. All right, Kate, the very first question in the very new studio is yours. This one comes to us from Nickerson, Nebraska. She thought this was an ant carrying something, but then she looked closer and she saw this white insect thing. What is this?
So these are pretty cool. This is a plant hopper nymph, which is just a fancy word for a juvenile or immature plant hopper. But they have these really cool white waxy secretions that they use to protect themselves from predators or parasitoids. So they end up just looking like a little ball of fluff on the plant.
And if you flick them, they
hop, yes.
They hop. All right, your second question, Kate. This is actually coming to us from Lincoln. They've had issues with buffalo grass and maybe thought chinch bugs, but they found this little guy at the grass roots, but not where the grass was dying. What is this?
Yeah, so this is one of our noctuid moths. It's most likely going to be the yellow striped armyworm. Unfortunately, it's not the culprit to the turf problems, though. They feed on a variety of things from cucumber to potato to alfalfa, but turf grass isn't one of them, so you might want to take a closer look at that grass and see if you can find another culprit.
All right, thanks, Kate. And one more in this first round. This comes to us from Syracuse. She had broccoli that got skeletonized. She found cabbage loopers on it, picked them off. But now she's seen this interesting thing. She said it was green, and then it kind of flipped over on its back and did this brown thing. What's going on?
Yeah, so these are the chrysalis of the cabbage worms, also known as the cabbage white butterflies. And so if you're having problems with the caterpillars, they do have several generations per year, so you just want to stay on top of that, do some scouting, and then pick them off to prevent the next generation from coming.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, you have 3 pictures on this first one, Matt. This comes to us from Lincoln. He thinks this is a different turf species invading his turf-type tall fescue backyard. He says lighter and finer blades, thick, soft, faster than the other turf, especially in the spring. It spreads, and he says he describes the blades as a little rubbery or rubberized. Big clumps, they're like carpet on the top of the surface. He pulled it up and he overseeded with tall fescue, but it has come back. And he thinks it's POA.
So, POA?
Yeah,
some
POA.
sort of POA. I think what this one is actually orchard grass, and it's a grass that grows really fast. And I was trying to zoom in on it, just the way that it's growing and just kind of the look of it. It's got that lime yellow look, and it does generally grow faster in the lawn, and it forms those clumps just by tillering. So every year it's going to grow bigger and bigger. And if it's in a nice wet area, it's going to form that root mass like you're seeing there. And one way to get rid of them is like you're doing, is to pull that out. Another way, if it is growing faster than the rest of the grass, there's no selective way. So you'd have to rub it or wipe it with Roundup, just the tops of it, and leave the other grass there. And that'd be one way to get rid of it. And then introduce some new seed into those.
All right, so in other words, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it can be. It forms in clumps, so if you get it early, it won't take over the lawn.
All right, thanks. You have one picture on this next one. This one comes to us from Omaha. She said, what weed is this? It's in her turf. How and when does she remove it? And the when in particular.
Yeah, the when. Okay, so this is actually a warm season perennial that is a weed in the lawns. And it's nimblewill. And this one usually is brown in the spring, and then it takes a little while to green up. You'll see these brown patches in the lawn, and then it'll actually go dormant on the first frost and turn brown again. So that's one way to tell that that's what it is, if it's kind of growing in a patch. To get rid of it, usually treating it with, there's only a couple products that selectively work, which would be Tenacity or Pylex. And those generally require, that spring application or late summer application when those plants are actively growing. And it generally takes 3 applications of Tenacity or at least 2 applications of Pilex. Otherwise, Roundup is the other option.
A big patch of Roundup.
Yeah,
all the
big
way
patch of
around.
Roundup. So you're going to have a dead spot and you're going to have to seed something into it.
All right, thanks, Matt. Dennis,
Yeah.
we're going to sort of bundle this first 4 set of pictures. They come to us, and this is 4 of 4,000 right now. West Omaha, Boys Town, this is a 4-year-old locust in one spot. Then we have one that's northwest Omaha. Was this a squirrel or a woodpecker? The limb fell from the tree. Then we have one that's Omaha that's bark missing way up there in the top of the tree. And then we have one from Ralston that says this is an autumn blaze. Should they eliminate or wrap? So is this all squirrel or is this something else? And what should we do?
It's all fox squirrel. They like the maples and the elms, things that have a lot of sugar and the cadmium, and they're going to feed on that constantly to get that sugar. So giving them corn and nuts usually won't stop them from doing this. They won't do it to oaks and a lot of our natural trees, and they usually don't like locusts as much, but evidently, if they're hungry enough, they will. But they will go after the maples and the elms very voraciously. It's hard to stop it. You can try a repellent or put in a spray of vegetable oil and a hot cayenne pepper mixture. Everybody says, well, how hot? If you touch it and you run for the milk, that's hot enough for the squirrel. And just spray it on those branches. As far as what to do about it, most of the arborists say nothing.
Right, because isn't one of the things that if you try to cover it or do anything like that, they go to a different branch?
Right, yeah.
All right. So you got this one. This is a fun one. This is actually Mills County, Iowa, and they think it's an albino, is it?
It's a genetic aberration fox squirrel. I wouldn't call it a true albino, probably a leucistic, which is kind of a technical name. So it's not a real albino, but it's on its way. It's a mutation. I would call it kind of a blonde squirrel.
And probably a good snack because it's easy to see.
Yeah,
Yeah. And one more, I think, and this one comes to us from northwest Omaha. Looks hairless, no hair on this. Is this normal?
No, it's not normal. It's a squirrel that's got mange. It looks like it's a melanistic or black squirrel, fox squirrel. And we've been seeing a number of these. One of the theories is that we had a mild winter, and that mild winter does not kill off the mange and ticks. Therefore, there's a problem with mange. And it's just going to take over and help keep the squirrel population at check.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Elizabeth, one picture on this first one. This comes to us from Aurora. This is a particular daylily. The foliage is yellow, more so than usual. It is on the west side of a shed with an alley. This is the 3rd year in the spot. This is the 1st year it's looked like this. She says it's out of the drip line of the shed there. And I know we've had several of these questions in this last week.
So parts of Nebraska have been receiving quite a bit of rain. And so there is the possibility that it could be something fungal. Unfortunately, at this point in time, by the time we see the infection, it's too late to be making those sprays because those sprays are preventative, not curative. And so what we're probably looking at is environmental. Nothing we can really do about it. I mean, if those yellow or brown ones really drive you nuts, go ahead and selectively prune them out of there. But otherwise, there's really nothing that we would do for them at this point in time.
Right. A lot of water will do that sort of thing. All right, 2 pictures on the next one. This one came to us actually starting in May, middle of May. She said her daisies started browning. They've flourished for years. She thought they were drying out, so she watered them, and that didn't help. And then she thought maybe it was too wet, but the ground was dry, and now they look like this. And I know we've had a lot of asters or things in this family doing the same thing.
Yep, and this is going to be the same thing. It's environmental conditions, caused by a lot of moisture. And then what happens is we also started to get hot, and we have rock mulch there too, and that dries it out. And then we add additional water. So unfortunately, if they're looking really rough, you could go ahead and give them a cut back because they're not going to look any prettier this season. So,
Right.
That's about the only thing we can do right now.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, unfortunately, we've had flooding along the Missouri River in northeastern Nebraska, and some of you may have had your vegetables underwater. For our first feature tonight, Scott Evans is going to give us some tips on whether to keep it or throw it away.
Portions of the Midwest have been affected by flooding this year, and we want to make sure that you have the correct information to help you decide what to do with your vegetable garden. If you've already decided to forego this season, we are recommending to pull all that plant material and get it into the trash. We are not recommending composting because most composting systems do not get hot enough to break down any pathogens or agriculture chemicals that could be present. We're also recommending not to save any of that plant material for any of our wildlife, livestock, or our pets. Get that plant material out of the system and into the trash. If you are going to try to salvage any of your plants this year, we need to follow the 90 and 120 day rule. The 90-day rule states that we need to wait 90 days before we can harvest any of the plant material that is up off the ground. This is going to include any of our fruit and nut trees, corn, tomatoes, peppers, anything that we eat that is held up off the ground. 90 days has to pass before we can harvest it. If that plant material grows along the soil surface or in the ground, such as potatoes, leafy greens, the squash, or vine crops, we need to observe 120 days before we harvest that plant material. If you've done any of the math in your head, you know that this is going to push us clear into October and November, and depending on where you're at in the state, most of us will have a hard frost or freeze by that time. But not all hope is lost. Extension educator Terry James has an excellent nut guide online that you can find and download, and she will walk you through on how to incorporate fruits and vegetables into container gardens. We still have time to try a lot of our leafy greens such as spinach, kale, Swiss chard. We can even be daring into some of our vine crops such as bush cucumbers, or if we're lucky enough, some of our garden centers might still have patio tomatoes that you could put in the container, so we could still get a harvest this season. So no matter how the flood affected you this year, you need to remember the 90 or 120 day rule. You can forego harvesting, or you could try some containers this year to get a harvest, but if you're ever in doubt of what to do, throw out the plant.
As Scott said, there really is still plenty of time to get a few things planted. Keep those fingers crossed for a late harvest. But remember to be safe with the produce that may have been affected by the flood. If you have doubts, throw it away, buy it from somebody else. All right, pictures next. Kate, let's see. You've got on this one, this is a Weeping Water, Nebraska viewer. She had giant sunflowers that had these piles of caterpillars. She doesn't use chemicals. She wonders, are they good guys or bad guys? And should she just bag them and tag them or let them turn into something?
Sure, so we would consider these ones good guys because they will turn into the checker spot butterfly, which, as you know, butterflies can be pollinators, so we want to make sure we conserve them and keep them around. If you're willing to sacrifice some leaves of that sunflower, please do so, or you can always move them onto one plant that you don't mind looking a little ugly.
And when they're that size, how long does it take them to become a butterfly?
It'll take at least a couple weeks. Those ones look pretty small, so it might take a little longer for them to move off of the plant, form a chrysalis, and then become butterflies.
All right, thanks, Kate. Let's see, we have a couple pictures on this next one, or one anyway. This is from, this is Alma. And she found these on bindweed, front and back of a bindweed leaf next to daylilies. So she wonders what this is, and in the best of all worlds, Matt, maybe this eats bindweed.
Yeah, we should get some more of them.
Yeah, so these are really cool, and I'm gonna geek out a little bit for a second, but these are the larvae of tortoise beetles. And if you look really closely on these pictures, you see these blackish brown clumps on the back, and those are actually fecal shields. So they'll actually collect their cast exoskeletons and their feces, and they'll form a little protective shield that helps keep the predators and the parasitoids at bay. So really unique in the insect world and pretty cool. Maybe not to some, but to me it is.
Yeah, the panel is not giving you the thumbs up on that one,
Never
Kate.
seen such a sweet fecal.
I try it. I try it.
Not happening. All right, you have 2 pictures on the next one, Kate. This comes to us from Dover, Delaware. She found these beautiful strangers near her shade garden. She did find them on the house. She wonders, what are they and should she be concerned?
Boy, was I relieved when I read that this was in Delaware and not Nebraska. So this is the spotted lanternfly, which is an invasive species. It's really common now in northeastern United States. It has not yet been found in Nebraska, but it's always good to just be vigilant and check. And they're pretty but destructive. So they have over 70 different host plants, including maple, apple, grapes, hops, and the tree of heaven, which is also an invasive species as well. So because they cause so much damage to these crops, it's really important to just keep an eye out for them. And if you do see a spotted lanternfly, be sure to report it as well.
All right, and where would they report that?
They would report that to the USDA.
All right, thanks, Kate. Let's see, Matt, you have 1 picture on this first one. This comes to us from Atlantic, Iowa. She said this vine is taking over her daylilies. It spreads and it has small violet-colored flowers. Should she pull it, or what should she do to get rid of it?
Yeah, if you can look on that like bottom right corner of the picture, there's that little pink flower, and then it has a yellow cone in the middle of it, and that is black night, or I don't know if it's black nightshade, but bittersweet nightshade. So it is a possible poisonous plant, I guess it could be to somebody that's gonna chew on that plant, or the berries that it produces. When it produces them, they usually start out green and then they turn to an orange color and then to a red color, and so that would be a nightshade family, and that would be one that I would try and get rid of. It's a perennial, so try and get it out.
Pulling or something
pulling
different?
it out, or spraying it with a broadleaf herbicide should work as well.
All right, 1 picture on the next one. This is sort of your vine series.
Yeah.
So this one is in Lincoln. They wonder what this one is, and it's all over shrubs in the yard, grows really fast. Is it annual or perennial, and how to control this one?
So this is a summer annual, and it's wild buckwheat. You can tell by those seeds that are all over that vine there, and that's kind of a signature move for that one, I guess. They call it black bindweed. So not only do we have field bindweed taking over everywhere, we also have this one that can be very invasive and seeds out rapidly, and just, at least it's an annual, but it produces a lot of seed. So there's no good way to get it out of, let's say, if you were trying to keep your shrubs. So you're gonna have to manually remove it, try and do it before it flowers and seeds, and reduce that seed for next year. One thing you could do is probably do a little bit heavier mulch to cover up some of that seed with the pre-emergent herbicide around your shrubs to try and prevent it from happening next year.
All right, Matt, and 1 more, and this is also a Lincoln viewer. They're wondering, is this honeyvine, and look at those aphids, Kate.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And how do you keep it from spreading it everywhere?
And that, same. It is honeyvine milkweed, and it'll have those big seed pods on them, which are pretty neat looking. And the aphids, I don't know, they look like they're having a good time. I would leave those on there. Controlling that one, same thing. I mean, you can't really spray on your trees any of the herbicides that work well on vines. If you were to like cut the vine and then treat that stem with, let's say, just 2,4-D or something like that, that would probably work, or try and manually remove the root, find the base, and then the rest of the top will die, and then at some point you might have to drag that off of the tree because they'll get 20, 30 feet up in the air sometimes.
All right, thank you, Matt. Dennis, 1 picture on the first one here. This comes to us from Bruning. He says, what kind of frog is this? It was by their garden.
Okay, it's a gray tree frog. I know it's green. They go back and forth between gray and green with their chromatophores. They used to be only in eastern Nebraska, but now they're found as far west as North Platte. So they're moving along the Platte River, the loop system, and the Niobrara westward. And they just eat bugs. They're great.
All right, perfect. You have 1 picture on the next one. This one is in Lincoln. She says this black frog or toad is actually living in her retaining wall. What is it, and why is it living in the retaining wall?
Well, I don't know why it's living in a retaining wall. It's a invasive bullfrog.
Ooh.
Bullfrog is one of our only invasive, it is our only invasive anurin or frog in the state. It's dark because it's a little bit dehydrated, and it's probably not doing well. They can change their chromatophores as well. I would say don't worry about it. It probably will die, which is a good thing for an invasive. So.
Okay, and this is a neat one. This particular Gretna viewer found a hoary bat. This is your third picture. Two young were hanging. It was lying on the ground. He did call wildlife rescue, but thought this would be a good opportunity for you to talk about what people should do if they find a bat.
Well, first thing to do is try to stay clear and leave it alone. Don't grab it, it'll be okay. If it seems like it's in distress, then you can call wildlife rehab or game and parks especially. We have 13 species. We do have 3 or 4 species that are in need of concern that we need to protect. Most of the time, all we see is the big brown bat, Aptiscus fuscus, but we do have the hoary bat and the red bat and the Brazilian free-tail bat and some of those others that are quite low in numbers, and both nationally and locally. So best thing to do is just leave them alone. They're probably, if they're on the ground, doesn't mean they're rabid or anything's wrong with them. It could be that they got wet and fell or something like that. So let it be.
All right, thank you, Dennis. We have, let's see, Elizabeth, you have 2 pictures on the first one here. This comes to us from Aurora. She says this oak was planted in the fall of 21. It's growing, but every single year it looks like this, and then she's wondering also when to prune it.
So when the leaves start to look like this, it's a condition called oak leaf tatters. And there's lots of different causes for oak leaf tatters. Some say it could possibly be herbicide. Some say it could be high temperatures. Some say it could be cool temperatures. Regardless, it's going to fall underneath that environmental category, which means that it's not caused by a pathogen. So there wouldn't be anything that we would do for the oak leaf tatters themselves. Just go ahead and make sure that tree gets adequate moisture. It's in an irrigated lawn, so it's probably getting more than enough moisture from when those sprinklers go off. Now, in terms of pruning, what we want to do with oaks is we want to make sure that that oak is dormant before we prune it. So we're going to wait until November. And this is a one-time only thing that I'm going to say. With oaks, we can and should be sealing off those pruning wounds. And the reason for that is that helps to prevent that oak wilt from being moved around. All the rest of the trees, when we make a pruning cut, we say leave them open to the environment. But with oaks, we want to be sealing those, whether it's a paint, whether it's a tar, whether it's clear spray paint, just something to cover up that wound. So that one's going to be in the fall when it's dormant. It's going to be the best time.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. You have 3 pictures on the next one. This is a 10-year-old hibiscus. He says he doesn't use any sort of a herbicide in his backyard. He doesn't think that's the problem. What do you think?
That is classic symptoms of a growth regulator herbicide. Anytime that we have that cupping upward, that's going to be our indication. Now, it's going to be some of those products like 2,4-D or like dicamba that are going to give us some of those symptoms. And they can be applied on a calm, cool day, but what happens is it volatilizes or evaporates. It goes into the air and then it moves on the wind currents. And we have certain species that are kind of our indicator species. And that hibiscus is one of those that really is dramatic when it comes to letting us know if it got a whiff of herbicide.
All right, even though he didn't do it.
Even though he didn't do it, it looks like the flowers are set on, so I think it's still going to flower.
All right, thanks. And you have 1 picture on the next one here. This is a Japanese maple. This is in Omaha. Excuse me. Said planted it in 22. It looked dead in 23, had a few leaves. Removed the top half in the fall of 23, and now look at it. And his question is, should he remove the suckers at the bottom, and is this a good time to do that?
So with those suckers, we can remove them at any point in time as long as they're coming up from around the base. You know, if they're coming off the trunk itself, we can remove those. We just don't want to remove more than 1/3 of the canopy at any one point in time. Now, that being said, we need to make sure that that trunk is in good condition. It was kind of tough to see, but it looked like there might have been some trunk damage, so that could be what's adding to that decline of that tree. So just keep it in good health. Shoot for about 1 inch of supplemental moisture a week.
And Protect it from Dennis's squirrels because that is
Yep.
that is a maple. Yeah, and they will go after the base of that. All right. Well, we have a break coming up, but before that, let's hear from Gannon Rush from UNL's High Plains Regional Climate Center about what we can expect for this week's forecast.
Thanks, Kim. I'm happy to be here in the new studio. I hope everyone watching had a chance to get outside and enjoy the nice weather this past week, as the heat's about to return with a vengeance. Starting on Friday, temperatures will climb into the hundreds out west. By Sunday, the majority of the state will be near or above 100 degrees. Places such as Chadron could see near record highs, while the heat index in the eastern part of the state will be brutal. If you have to be outside this weekend, please do so in the morning. Monday and Tuesday will still be rather warm, but some relief will arrive on Wednesday. With the heat returning, precipitation will be limited this week. The greatest amounts are expected out west near Sydney of just over an inch. A few scattered storms are possible tonight through Sunday, but they're predominantly out west. The greatest chances of rainfall this week will likely be next week on Tuesday night into Wednesday across the majority of the state. And that's your weekly weather forecast. Back to you, Kim.
Right now, of course, it is time for the lightning round. So we start, of course, with Elizabeth. Ready?
Sure.
Okay. This is a Blair viewer, and she had multiple small trees and had either hail or critter damage to the trunks in multiple locations. What should be done about that?
Water, watch, and wait. See what happens. If it's more than 1/3 of the trunk, then it's going to struggle.
All right. We have a York viewer who had horseradish that got sprayed with Roundup along with everything else, and he is wondering, is it okay to dig it and eat it in the fall?
There is no pre-harvest interval on herbicides, so I cannot recommend that we eat that.
All right. He is also then wondering, as a follow-up, is that something that will persist in the soil, so he should just have to start over?
It's my understanding that glyphosate, once it comes in contact with the soil surface, it starts to break down, so there shouldn't be carryover in the soil.
All right, nice job. We have an Omaha viewer who has squash blossoms that are all male, wondering how to get the females.
Wait for cooler weather.
All right. We have a viewer from North Platte who wonders whether metal raised beds like ours are going to cause the sides to heat up too much, or is that a good option?
If it's cost effective, go ahead and use it. There is a possibility they could heat up, but no different than if it was black.
All right, nice job. Okay, Dennis, ready?
Yeah, always ready.
Always ready. All right. Your first one comes to us from Omaha. This is a viewer who says, how in the world do they keep the woodpeckers from pecking holes in the house?
Use a balloon-like deterrent. You just blow it up and it keeps them away.
A balloon-like.
Yep.
All right. We have also an Omaha viewer who wants to know how to prevent raccoons from making their latrine around his backyard pond.
I would the best thing to do is put something spiky there, or very like roses or something that if they go to bend over, they're going to get it right up the raccoon.
Dennis, we have a viewer here also from Lincoln who wants to know what is the most permanent way to get bats to stop living behind shutters?
Just 100% netting it.
All right. Fort Calhoun acreage, he says the turkeys attacked his rhubarb. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I have not.
All right. We have a lake liver. We don't know which lake. How high or strong a barrier do they need for beavers around their trees?
5 foot.
All right. Very nice job. You ready, Matt?
Yeah, let's get after it.
Okay. Your first one comes to us. I've forgotten where on this one. I don't have that written down. She wants to know the disadvantages of planting moss as a lawn alternative. Are there any?
Generally just grow in areas where it's going to stay wet, so the turf won't compete. If the moss is growing thick, it should outcompete the turf.
All right. We have a viewer who has a south-facing lawn and clay soil. He says on the blades of his grass, he's seen the silvery stuff. What would that be, and is it dangerous?
I'm not sure what that would be. It could just be
Powdery mildew.
Powdery mildew, I guess.
Okay, and nothing to do, right?
I don't know. I think you can wait for better weather on that one.
Okay. We have an Omaha viewer who wants to know, what is the proper method of thistle control? Is it to pull it and put it in the trash if it's in your lawn?
Just cut it at the base and then take the flowers off and throw them away.
All right. We have an Alliance viewer who wants to know why preen cannot be used as a seed barrier in a mixed grass lawn.
Preen cannot be used for
Cannot
what?
be used.
For a
Yeah.
barrier? Preen, they make a pre-emergent herbicide, Preen does. It can
Okay.
be used as a weed herbicide in a
So
grass
he's probably
lawn,
got the wrong one, maybe.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a Preen extended control, which is not the one you want to put in any type of garden because it has azoxybin in it, I think it is, or something like that, that is not safe for edible plants.
All right, very
That's
good.
word 3, I think.
I think that's word 0. You're going backwards.
Yeah.
All right, Kate, you ready?
Sure.
We have a Wahoo viewer who wants to know what would eat the roots of their zucchini. It looked great in the morning, and between morning and night, it just collapsed.
It could possibly be the squash vine borer. It'll feed on the stem right at the soil line.
And what to do about that?
It's probably past saving the plant at this point, but next year you can wrap some foil around that stem to prevent egg laying.
All right. Do we have the dark-winged fungus gnat larva in Nebraska? This question came to us from somebody who thought she saw a 3-inch long dark-winged larva.
Dark-winged fungus gnats, we do get those, but they're really small, so I wonder if she's thinking of a different type of fly.
All right, she needs to send us a picture.
Yes.
We have somebody who has pots that were infested with earwigs, which ate their plants. What can be done to avoid that next year?
So earwigs can be a little bit tricky. One good thing that you can do with earwigs is to do baits. You can either lay down boards, check those in the morning, or a tuna can with a little bit of oil at the bottom acts as a nice little trap.
All right, very nice job. And I guess the end of the table there is going to have to share the...
I think they forgot to give me 3 on that one. I think
I don't want to embarrass you, Dennis.
All right, there you go, perfect. Well, every week, Terry invites you to come out to visit the Backyard Farmer Garden. And there's never a better time than this weekend for East Campus Discovery Days. Here's Terry to tell us more.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, it is beautiful. We are now at that kind of high point of the summer. All of our flowers are looking fantastic. We have cosmos blooming. All of our celosia is looking great. We have vegetables coming out. We've gotten about 30 pounds of produce harvested so far. So the garden looks fantastic, which means you need to visit it. And that means stopping by East Campus Discovery Days this weekend on Saturday. We will be here on July 13th from 10 to 2 answering all of your gardening questions. You'll be able to stroll the garden, check it all out, see all of our new All-America selection choices for 2024, and ask all of your gardening questions. So stop by, visit East Campus Discovery Days, grab something from the food truck to eat, and stroll through the Backyard Farmer Garden. So I'll see you there.
We hope to see you in the garden. And with that, Elizabeth, let's talk about plants of the week.
Yeah, so we have some really nice plants of the week. We're going to start with the awesome purple one here. This is a liatris, or a blazing star. This is a very nice line flower. It grows about 4 foot tall, and it extends its bloom time because it starts blooming at the top and then works its way down. So it has a really extended bloom time, attracts all sorts of pollinators. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the liatris is it does come from a corm, which is like a bulb, and voles really like it. So we need to make sure that we need to keep the voles at bay, and so we can keep our liatris blooming. The white one in the front, the big one, this is a hydrangea, and this is one called Quickfire. The Quickfire hydrangea is a paniculata type hydrangea, which means it has kind of like a cone-shaped flower to it. It has a very upright open form, about 5 to 6 foot tall. Now the thing with Quickfire is the flowers start out white, but as as they fade and as they get older, they start to turn pink. So this is one of those hydrangeas that's going to do well in that part shade to kind of sun environment. Really changes as the flower progresses. So a really fun one in the landscape.
Well, and it's also one that's not quite as
Not like the Annabelles with the snowballs,
in your
right?
face. Yeah, excellent. So very beautiful plants of the week this week, and you can see this one in the Backyard Farmer Garden.
Okay.
All right, excellent. So we have announcements always of great things going on in the gardening world. And of course, this week, we've already talked about East Campus Discovery Days. Let's just mention it again, because what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come, visit, eat all that wonderful, great food, and of course, come see our garden. All right, we're going back to questions on that. Let's see, Kate, your first one, this is a great picture, by the way, isn't it? This comes to us from Omaha. She found these on a daisy flower stem. What are these?
So these are recently hatched brown marmorated stink bugs. You can see the little empty egg cases right there. And unfortunately, brown marmorated stink bugs are another one of those invasive species. We don't really see problems with it in home gardens, but they do like to invade houses in the late summer and fall, so you can keep an eye on that.
All right, thanks, Kate. You have two pictures on the next one. This viewer is seeing a few ants most every day in several different rooms. He's calling them one-node ants, and he thinks they're carpenter ants, but he would like an expert opinion, and then he wants to know what to do about it.
He's absolutely right. This is the black carpenter ant. And unfortunately, carpenter ants can be a little bit tricky because they could either be foraging inside from outside where their nest is located, or they could be nesting in some wood with moisture issues in the home. And so we really recommend just following the ant. Play a nice little game, give it a snack and see where it goes. You can figure out where it's coming from. And if you have concerns about it nesting inside, we do recommend contacting a pest management professional to do a thorough inspection.
All right, thanks, Kate. You have two pictures for this one. This is a Davenport viewer. We could have had, unfortunately, an awful lot of these. We thought maybe we had escaped this year, but not so much. This is a linden. Of course, people want to know anything they can do and or will the plants be okay?
Yeah, so this is the Japanese beetle, and it is causing that skeletonization that you see on the leaves here. Unfortunately, which I keep saying, unfortunately, but linden is one of its favorite host plants. So you're probably going to see a lot of feeding. And also there's restrictions on pesticide use of lindens because they're very popular with pollinators. The good news is that mature trees bounce back really easily from this feeding, so you won't need to worry about doing any treatments at that point.
So should people use the traps, though, for other things? Yeah.
If you want to attract hundreds, if not thousands of Japanese beetles, you can use the traps, but we don't recommend it because they attract more than you want.
All right, thanks, Kate. And you have one picture on the next one. All he said on this is object in photo. What is that?
So this is really neat, and it's created by the aptly named potter wasp. So it's a potter wasp nest. It's a solitary wasp, and it'll catch spiders and caterpillars and bring it back to this little pot to feed its young.
And just one, right? Just one pot?
Just one pot.
One pot?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You have a really interesting one, I'm afraid, on this one, Matt. This comes to us from Cheyenne, Wyoming. He inherited this weed with a great root system, in quotes, in his garden. It came with the house, and its ability to propagate should a root segment remain in the soil is legend. He wants to know what it is and any assistance on control or eradication.
That is a good one. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on this one, but it looks almost like a ragweed. So I'm thinking a burr ragweed was the one I came up with that is probably the closest just by those images that you gave me. And they do have a very deep taproot, so they can survive drought very easily. Control-wise, it is a perennial, so if you want to treat this one, I would say later in the fall or end of the summer is going to be better because you're going to get translocation down into the roots. So using a product, if you're just spot treating these plants, something that contains a few of the broadleaf herbicide, let's say if it's not close to any trees or anything, I'd say triclopyr with 2,4-D in the fall. That way you're not doing it in the spring and risking any other plants in the nearby landscape.
All right, thanks, Matt. 2 pictures on the next one, coming to us from Beatrice. Wonders what these brown things are. He says they do water 2 times a week. They don't feel it's a lack of water, part sun, part shade. They do have different types of turf, which they know in there, and they do have a lawn company that fertilizes.
Got it. So yeah, this time of year, generally when this lawn is checking out like that, a lot of times it can be rough bluegrass or some undesirable grass that we have in our lawn, let's say annual bluegrass, rough bluegrass. And those generally do really good in the spring when it's moist and wet. And then when the trees get canopied and the weather dries out, it turns brown. And you can see that the tall fescue in that lawn is doing well. It's got deep roots and it's green, whereas those other plants have very shallow roots. So watering, they're going to get disease easier and they're just going to check out. So I would say overseeding with some other variety, let's say that's more shade tolerant, within that landscape is going to help you out in the long run.
All right, thanks, Matt. And 2 picks on this one, too. This comes to us from Blair, could also come from Lincoln. Why is the lawn yellowing right now? Portions are yellowing. He does say this one seems to be turning yellow from the top down.
Okay, so there's a bunch of different reasons. This one kind of looks like it could have been some disease issues. It's not really bad. Maybe a little bit of brown patch in there, just kind of spread throughout the landscape. With the weather that's coming up, it might get worse because we're going to have really humid nights and warm temperatures. So if it is that bad, it could warrant a fungicide. But if it's recovering, it looks like there's a lot of green under there growing out of it, and it will probably be fine without treating.
All right, thank you, Matt. Dennis, let's see. Your next picture is 2 photos. This is an Alexandria viewer. Raised soil and tunneling all along this asparagus bed. He says it easily compresses when it's stepped on. What is it, and is it damaging, and how to control it?
So this is moles, and they're eating insects and grubs and mainly earthworms. If they're not uprooting the asparagus, they're mainly aerating. So they're good. So I wouldn't worry about them. They usually don't get into the turf unless you have a lot of worms in the turf, and they'll probably stay in that area that's well watered and covered with the mulch because there's more earthworms and insects in there.
All right. Let's see, 1 picture on this one. This is Bellevue, and this guy's moving across the yard. What is he?
It's a juvenile woodchuck or groundhog, and they're diurnal, and he's probably looking for mom.
All right, a baby. Fun. Midtown Omaha is your next picture. This is droppings in roughly the same spot every single day. The backyard is completely fenced. So what is doing this? Why is it in the same spot? And is there any way to stop it?
Well, the way to stop it is to find the raccoon that's doing it. Raccoons can climb any fence or house. Raccoons always try to defecate in the same location, just like cats do. So it's a raccoon. He's probably living in the gutter nearby or up in a tree or someone's attic nearby, and looks like he's getting some mulberries in his diet. But yeah.
All right.
I get all the scat.
You do. You do. You just have such a great job.
Thanks.
All right. Your next one comes to us from Norfolk. She's wondering, is this a hairless squirrel? He eats grape jelly that they put out for the Orioles.
It almost looks like a rat, but it is a fox squirrel that has mange really bad per squirrel. I give him all the jelly he can because his life is limited.
Okay, and one more, and this particular viewer said, lately as many as 7 turkey vultures are visiting the barn staring at the house. This is in Cozad, and he's kind of creeped out by it.
How old is this person?
Well, that's why he said 79. Yeah.
I mean, when I was out in western Nebraska, there'd be flocks of a dozen flying over my head, and I wondered, is it my time? Mm-hmm. Come on down, guys. It's just a good place for them to warm up, and I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, a flock of 7 to 12 is nothing.
All right.
And they're great. I mean, they add phosphates and nitrates to the soil, and they clean up all the dead stuff.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Dennis. Elizabeth, let's see. You have 3 pictures from the same person. There are 3 different vegetables. What he's starting here with, he has a cauliflower that is looking like this. He's got a zucchini plant in a container that the zucchini sets on, the flower dies, then does the little zucchini dies. Does it not like the planter? And I think his third one is a pepper plant, never grew tall, got a couple green peppers. Any ideas on what's going on any of these?
So a lot of it we're going to chalk up to environmental. So when we're looking at that cauliflower, if it gets planted too late or it gets too hot too soon, it just really doesn't set on very well. And that coloration could just be because we haven't been blanching it and tying those leaves up to make it that pure white. But those little heads can be caused by environmental, by heat. Now when it comes to that zucchini, yep, it's inconsistent moisture. So that container might be a little small, and that's why that female flower is pollinated, and then all of a sudden it drops that little zucchini because of the inconsistent moisture. So a bigger container would allow that soil to remain damp for a longer period of time, and that'll help that zucchini fruit to stay on. And in terms of that pepper, it's just the year. I'm going to chalk it up to the weather because I know a lot of people are having issues with gardens that are just
Slow,
very slow.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. You have 2 pictures on the next one. This is an Albion viewer, garden devastated by hail, which Scott talked about. Her question is, should she go ahead and use a copper fungicide on any of these, the onions in particular, to get ahead of diseases?
So if you have a garden that has been hit by hail, you can use a copper fungicide as a preventative for some of those wounds that are in there. Now keep in mind with those onions, there is a possibility that they could re-sprout, which means that you're going to have an onion with 2 growing points in it, so no large onion rings, lots of little onion rings in that one. The cucumbers will put on new foliage. Once it puts on that new foliage, then you can selectively prune, but if you wanted to, a preventative copper fungicide would be beneficial.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Well, last week we showed you some odd plant formations. This week, Terry is going to point out what looks like a slimy mess in your mulch and other places in the garden. Slime molds might look terrible. Terry says they're harmless.
We get lots of questions about this funny kind of weird thing in people's gardens, usually in their landscape beds, kind of where a lot of mulch is. We get lots of pictures, and we actually have it in the backyard farmer garden this week. It's just slime mold. It's kind of cool. All those rots and spots people on the panel think it's very cool, and there's a couple of them that probably try to feed it to make it move. We're just gonna let it sit. All it does is sit and break down the organic matter. It can be white like ours is, it can be orange, it can be red. So lots of different colors. If you really don't want it there, you can scoop it up and push it off to the side. You can take a stream of water and kind of wash it away if you really don't want it there. But you know what? It's just nature, and it's just breaking down organic matter. So it's kind of cool. If you want to try to feed it and make it move and keep it alive, like some people on our panel tell us to, you can try that, but it's just part of nature. And if you have it in your own landscape, just enjoy it.
It is amazing how they can pop up overnight, disappear just as quickly. So as Terry said, though it's harmless, don't worry about it. All right, last round of questions rather quickly here, panel. 2 pictures on the first one for you, Kate. This is Meyer lemons, years 3 and 4. They've shown this discoloration. They were in a greenhouse. He sprayed them with insecticidal soap. Right thing to do. What should he have done?
This one was a little tough for me because I can't really see any insects on it. It's a sucking insect. It could be aphids, which insecticidal soap works, or spider mites. Use a strong spray of the hose. Generally that works, but otherwise you might need to bring in a sample so we can take a closer look.
All right, 1 picture on the next one. This is a Shadron viewer, and she is just wondering, what is this incredibly beautiful dragonfly?
This is a blue-eyed darner dragonfly. Yes, and they generally, this one you can't really see it very well, but they generally have really beautiful blue eyes too. Water dragonfly, kind of a water guy? Yeah, all dragonflies, they live in water when they're immature, so all of them are semi-aquatic.
All right, 1 picture on the next one. And he did a lot of Googling around and absolutely could not figure out what this incredible blue beetle is, but what is it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. This is a 6-spotted tiger beetle, which interestingly enough, I learned today, the ones here in Nebraska don't have their 6 spots.
So they're spotless.
So, spotless tiger beetle, yes.
So much for bug names. All right, Matt, you have, let's see, one picture on this first one. She said this started to pop up in full sun areas in her garden. She's not sure what these are.
I think it's a buttercup plant, and it will spread by stolons, and it produces a nice yellow flower. I don't know whether or not you want it in there. I think it'll continue to spread and take over, so I'd probably get rid of it unless you like it.
All right, then we have one picture on the next one. She wants to know what this is.
That is avens or white avens, so it usually has like a white pretty flower on it, and then it has these seed heads that have like these little spines on them, and when they turn brown and die, they stick to you, and that's how they get transported and spread around. So it's a perennial herb that's native to Nebraska, so I would probably get rid of it if you don't want it in your garden.
All right, and we have on this one, Johnson Lake viewer said windmill grass is showing up in their fescue lawn in areas where they want buffalo grass. Can they get rid of it without getting rid of all the rest of the grass?
Windmill grass is a warm season grass as well, so there's one herbicide that works, tenacity, so 3 apps of that, and you generally have to work on it year after year to get rid of it.
All right, Dennis, one picture on this first one. Something has done a chew on the garage like this. Wonders what that critter is, and should he use an oil-based paint? Just keep painting?
Okay. It's fox squirrels, and this is them marking their territory and rubbing their chin. It has nothing to do with eating. And what we want to do is use that vegetable oil with cayenne pepper. The oil paint won't change anything.
All right, one picture on this one. You'll love this. This is Hastings.
Yeah,
is this a garter snake, and is there a more stunning color pattern?
So the color is genetics, has nothing to do with the species, but this happens to be the Plains garter snake because it has 21 scale rows in the middle, I can tell that.
All right, and then we have one more for you, and this is Zion Countryside Church. Outside Gladstone, what's this?
Yeah, it's a bull snake eating your rodents.
Okay.
You can pay him.
She did say he did not come in for the service.
Oh, he didn't? Oh, you must not have any mice inside.
All right. Elizabeth, you have 2 pictures on the first one here. Wondering about identifying this. This is Bloomington, Nebraska.
So this is a spotted bee balm. It really likes the sandy environment. So it's a perennial and it's very happy in that spot.
Very beautiful, and the pollinators love it. You have 2 pics on this one. This comes to us from Yankton, South Dakota. Coming up all over the flower beds. She does have wildflower seeds, and she does have coneflower.
This is coneflower babies. So their echinaceas are seeding themselves. That's not uncommon for some of them to go ahead and do that. Let them do their thing and grow up to be big ones.
All right, perfect. And you have one picture on this one for your final question. She says she didn't plant this. It comes up every single summer. It's in a west-facing flower bed, and she's wondering, is it native?
No, it is a zebra mallow. And when we get to see the picture, you'll see that pretty purple. It spreads by seeds. It's a perennial. It's somewhat aggressive. So, I mean, if she doesn't like it, take it out now before it spreads by seeds.
Right. It is really pretty, though, and we do have that one in our backyard farmer garden from years ago, only we don't have very much of it. So, again, you know, all of these things that we talk about to our viewers as it's a weed or it's not, or it's a bad bug or it's not, is you get to decide whether it is a good guy or a bad guy.